Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into something really practical, the way we talk about eating out in English.
That's right. We've got this conversation from an English learning podcast, and we're going to pull out all the useful bits, the phrases, the vocabulary for discussing restaurants.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Our goal is basically to give you a quick way to understand and, use the kind of language people really use when talking about where to grab a bite.
Yeah, we'll look at words for food, how people suggest places, and, well, how they talk about good and bad experiences. Allergies, food poisoning, the
It could
works.
be useful. Okay, so let's start with a couple of key terms that popped up right away in their chat. First one, food poisoning.
Right. And it's pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? Getting sick because the food was, well, bad. Definitely not something you want.
Not at all. And the other one was allergic.
This is different. It's a specific reaction your body has to a certain food. Like the example they used was a seafood allergy.
Yeah, and they made it sound quite serious, like trouble breathing.
Exactly. It can be really dangerous. Peanuts, milk, seafood, these are common ones. It's not just disliking something. It's a physical reaction, a threat, really.
Okay, got it. So those definitions are important background. Now let's get into the actual scenario from the source material. Two people trying to decide on dinner.
Yep. And the first idea thrown out is an Italian place.
Described pretty positively, right? Fantastic food, beautiful decor.
Sounds ideal, doesn't it? But this is where it gets interesting. One person says they're not all that crazy about Italian food.
Ah, okay. A polite way of saying no thanks. And they wanted something a bit lighter.
Exactly. So even a glowing recommendation doesn't always hit the mark for everyone, you know? Depends on the mood, the craving.
Right. So suggestion number two comes up, a great little bistro.
And this one apparently has a tasty seafood platter. Sounds good. And outstanding fish.
Again, sounds promising.
Until, boom, the other person mentions they're allergic to seafood.
Oh boy. Yeah, that definitely rules that one out.
Yeah.
Shows how important those allergies are.
For sure. Okay, so plan C. They talk about another great little place.
This one's described as a hole in the wall.
Yeah, which usually means, maybe not fancy, but potentially really good authentic food.
And they mentioned amazing sandwiches.
But then comes the twist.
Right. The person who's allergic to seafood, they apparently got food poisoning there before.
Ouch. So even the amazing sandwich place has a dark past for one of them. It really shows how personal experiences shape these choices.
Totally. And why it's useful to have the words to talk about both the good and the bad, huh? Okay, let's unpack some of the language they use. How about check out? As in, check out a restaurant.
Yeah, check out. It's super common. It means like go see it, investigate it casually. It's not as formal as visit.
Right, like you'd check out a new coffee shop down the street.
Or check out a website or a new car you're thinking about buying. It's that initial look-see.
Makes sense. Okay, what about bistro? They described it small, informal, often French, mid-range price. What's the sort of feeling behind that word?
Good question. A bistro usually suggests somewhere cozy, maybe a bit traditional, but definitely relaxed. Not fine dining, but a step up from a basic cafe. You expect decent, maybe hearty food without too much fuss.
Gotcha. And then there was that phrase, not all that crazy about, it's such an indirect way to say you don't like something. Why do we do that?
Well, that's classic English indirectness, isn't it? It's about politeness.
Yeah.
Saying, I hate Italian food can sound well, a bit harsh, especially if the other person suggested it.
Right, because it feel like you're rejecting their taste.
Exactly. So not all that crazy about it softens the blow. It's gentler, less confrontational. It keeps the conversation flowing smoothly.
That's a really good point. Okay, let's talk tasty. They said it's basically good or delicious, but maybe more common.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Tasty is very everyday language. You hear it all the time. Delicious might sound a little more emphatic. Or maybe for something exceptionally good.
So tasty for the sandwich,
Yeah,
maybe delicious for a fancy dessert.
kind of, yeah. Though honestly, people use them pretty interchangeably. But tasty is definitely a go-to word for food that hits the spot.
Okay. And the last phrase, in the mood for. Feeling like having something. What's that tell us?
It highlights that our choices aren't always logical, It's about how you feel right now, your current desire or inclination.
Like wanting something lighter, maybe you can't explain why, you just feel like it.
Precisely. It acknowledges that immediate feeling, that craving, what are you in the mood for, is a really common way to start that dinner discussion.
So thinking back to that whole restaurant negotiation,
Mm,
knowing these phrases adds a lot of layers, doesn't it? You hear the politeness, the preferences.
absolutely. It's not just exchanging information, it's a social interaction with all these nuances.
And the Source podcast apparently had a section on making recommendations too, of Fluency Builder.
Yeah, they covered asking for suggestions. Things like, do you have any suggestions? Pretty standard.
Or do you have any ideas? Any thoughts?
Right. Any thoughts?
Uh.
Feels quite gentle, kind of open-ended.
And for giving suggestions. They mentioned, I'd recommend giving it a try.
Yep, I'd recommend. Nice and polite. Standard advice.
But then also the more enthusiastic one.
Mm-hmm.
You got to give them a try.
Yes. That one carries more weight, doesn't it? Like a strong personal endorsement. It implies you really liked it.
You've got to. Yeah, it feels more urgent, more persuasive.
Definitely. And they also pointed out pronunciation using contractions, like I'd instead of I would.
And you got to instead of you have got to.
Exactly. And that's crucial, right? For sounding natural, native speakers use contractions all the time.
Oh, absolutely. If you always say I would not instead of I wouldn't, it can sound a bit stiff, maybe even robotic.
And it helps with understanding, too. If you're listening for I would, you might miss I'd completely when watching movies or just chatting.
Yeah, good point. Essential for both speaking and listening.
So listening back to that original dialogue again, you'd probably notice those contractions and the general flow much more clearly now.
I think so. You know, all this talk about bad experiences, it reminds me, I actually had a run-in with food poisoning once. Not fun.
Oh, really? Where was that? What happened?
Well, I wasn't expecting it at all. I was in Morocco, actually. And I just had some orange juice from a street stall.
Orange juice? That seems unlikely to cause problems.
That's what I thought. But, well, maybe the water they used to, I don't know, rinse the glasses or something. Or maybe ice. Anyway, hours later, on a long bus journey, I was, well, let's just say it was extremely unpleasant.
Oh, no. On a bus, that's the worst.
Tell me about it. Stuck there feeling awful. It was rough. Definitely memorable, but not in a good way.
Wow. Yeah, see, it happens. And having the words to describe it, even just to share the story later, it's useful. Or to warn someone, perhaps.
For sure, it's part of the whole spectrum of dining experiences.
And the original podcast mentioned an audio review section, too, for reinforcing the vocabulary. We don't have that, obviously. But it does underline the point that hearing and repeating these phrases helps lodge them in your brain.
Absolutely. Practice and exposure are key.
Huh.
So wrapping this up, it feels like we've pulled quite a bit from that one conversation.
I think so. We've covered vocabulary for describing food and places, both good and bad tasty, outstanding, but also food poisoning, allergic.
We looked at how to be polite when you don't like something not all that crazy about, and how to talk about what you do want in the mood for.
Mm-hmm. And the practical stuff, like asking for and giving recommendations using those natural contractions like I'd and you've got to.
It really shows how even a simple chat about dinner plans is packed with useful, everyday English.
Yeah, a pretty good deep dive into the practical language you'd actually use.
So maybe something for you, the listener, to consider. Think about your own restaurant stories. What's the best meal you've ever had out? Or maybe the worst.
Yeah, how would you describe it using some of this language? Could you recommend that great place using I'd recommend or you've got to try?
Or maybe warn someone off that dodgy place where you had an unfortunate experience. It's a good way to practice. And perhaps it sparks an interest in finding more of these kinds of real-world English examples.
Definitely. Keep listening, keep noticing how people talk. It's a great way to learn.